Greetings, warriors! My name's Pruitii, and I love art. I love art in any form, be it drawing, be it other things. I'm very intelligent, can't you tell? But I love doing art. Though my main form of doing art is digital illustration, I love diving into other forms of art. Most of the time, that goes, I try something for like a day, and then it sits in my closet forever, never to be touched ever again. And I'm kind of over that. I kind of want to celebrate being able to make art, whether it's really, really bad or really, really good. Like, I want to celebrate the act of just creation. So I have decided to make this little video series where I let my ADHD decide what art craft I'm going to be focusing on for a little bit of time, and then I make a little video talking about it. I challenge you guys, find something that maybe you want to try, maybe something that's been sitting in your closet forever, whether it's a creative thing or whether it's not. Something that is fun, that will bring you happiness. I challenge you to do it. Do it with me. Join this journey. This episode is all about Polymer clay. Now, you might be asking, why Polymer clay? That seems very different from digital illustration. Yes, it is. But the reason is I have these beautiful clay figures that I adore with all of my heart. One of them is me, and one of them is Layla from Kitchen. I have a couple others that I'm not going to show, but I'm just showing these two right now. But I love these things. I love how they look, how I, paid an artist to do them. They're handcrafted, they look stunning, and I love them. They are such beautiful decorations in my office that make me happy. And I have this itch for more. I want more. But finances are not agreeing with me. So my brain, who likes to pick out crafts to do, and my ADHD got together and said, hey, why don't we just get some clay? Why don't we make it? I'm an artist. How hard can it be, right? How hard can it be? Once my brain got that little nugget, that little idea, I didn't need to research, right? I just needed to buy some clay, get my hands on it, fiddle around with it, touch it, go, let's shop. Let's just go full speed ahead, because who needs research when starting something new? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. This will come back later. So this is the clay that I ended up purchasing. You will notice a trend with me. My weakness is when things have lots of colors. Lots of colors. The more colors, the better for me. Even though, realistically, I understand how to mix colors. I understand color theory. I understand all of that. But despite that, the more colors it has, the better, right? Right? That's what my brain thinks, even though if it's not actually true most of the time. But hey, this is the set that I purchased. I have my opinions on this set, which we will get to the end, but I have my opinions on that. When I got my clay, I wasn't expecting it to be so small. My dreams of probably making an entire figure are out the window with this clay set, and that's okay. Honestly, I think that was for the better. But when it arrived, my brain screamed. It wasn't organized. All of the colors were just thrown everywhere in this thing. Really grinded my gears. I spent too long organizing it, and it made my brain happy. With that, with the clay in my hands, with the tools that it came with in my hands, I began my first project. My first project for doing clay, since I was maybe like a kid, is a little ducky. Yay, little ducky. Why did I do a little ducky? Simple shapes. Make up a ducky. Not too complicated of, details and all of that stuff. And plus, my kid likes ducks. So I kind of made it as a present for them. I was ready. I got my idea, got the clay, and I started very small. Literally, like, this duck came out so small. Despite having a myriad of colors to choose from, I still ended up mixing colors. Yay! I didn't like the shades of the yellow. I first started with the head. The head was pretty easy because I was going for very simplistic duck. I began noticing a problem for me. I have a very small work area on my desk for crafts, mainly because my drawing tablet is on my desk and it's kind of huge. It's like literally the size of an entire monitor. So that makes my workspace pretty small. And that meant I dropped the clay a lot. The clay wasn't as high quality as I wanted because there was things inside of it now. But I got it to be a pretty good shape after all of that. Once I had the face done, I moved on to doing the, eyes and the beak because the head shape was done. The eyes were a bit harder than the head. I made it way too small, so small. I kept needing to remove more and more clay to get the eyes not either bulging out of the duck's head or taking over the entirety of the duck's head. In the end, they came out pretty cute. Yay, progress. And then the beak. The beak was an entirely different story. It was so frustrating, man. It was so frustrating. I tried so hard to get it in this nice little shape, and I just could not get it right. I kept dropping it obviously on the ground, and then I would need to remold it into that shape, and then I noticed something. It started getting sticky. The more and more I touched the clay and tried to mold it into the shape that I wanted, it was getting sticky. I thought, maybe it was just this color. Maybe because I dropped it so much. The duck beak was eventually done. Got on the duck, so the head was completely done. Now came doing the duck's body. My original plan was having little duck wings on the sides too, because I thought that would be cute. I gave up on that little idea because the body was dropped even more than the head and the beak were. Like it was dropped so much because I was trying so hard to get it to the shape that I wanted, which meant I picked it up quite a lot instead of leaving it on my desk. It just would not mold into the shape that I wanted. It just was not coming to me. I don't know whether if it was just the clay was being mean to me that day, or if I literally could not fathom what the shape of a duck was anymore. But once I finally got the shape done, I stopped. I was like, I am not putting wings on this thing, because if I put wings on this thing, I'm going to completely ruin it. Again, the sticky problem was coming up too when I was finishing it. Once the body was done, I stuck the head on the body and put it in the oven to bake, because polymer clay, you need to bake. Okay, none of these clay pieces that you were going to see were baked correctly, because when you're baking polymer clay, it's highly, highly encouraged not to do it on a metal baking sheet. Unfortunately, I didn't really have any of that to my disposal, and I wasn't going to purchase an entire new object just to bake it. So the Ducky was complete. It is incredibly small, but despite all of the hardship of dropping it and getting it sticky and not having it mold to the shapes I wanted for a very long time, I'm happy with it. It came out pretty cute, I think. It was pretty small, and it gave me the beginning foundations of what I needed to know to do clay work. Something happened once it was all done. Something in my brain tickled. This came out pretty cute, right? I need to try making something bigger. Why don't I do something bigger? Something that I've wanted to make with the clay that I didn't have the experience for. My greed got greedy, and I decided I was going to make an anime figure for my next clay project. Anime figure. I obviously wasn't going to be making one super big or super detailed, but anime figure. When I purchased my clay, I also purchased very thin metal that I've seen people use it before to kind of like get the right shapes, keep things staying. So I grabbed some of that and measured my figures roughly with them to kind of get a shape for scale. And I realized pretty quickly that I was going to run out of clay fast if I did that. So I decided, okay, I'm just gonna make a tiny itty bitty figure. Not a full-size one like the ones I have, maybe just something cute like somebody's sitting. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I wanted to do a Sailor Moon figure because I love Sailor Moon. Pruitii and all of that stuff. Sailor Moon was ginormous a part of my life. So I wanted to make a figure for it. I was torn on whether if I was going to do Super Sailor Moon or Princess Serenity because both of those designs are my favorites. You know what? As I go along, I'm sure I'll decide. I want to warn you, I did not take a lot of pictures for this one. There's multiple reasons why. One of them was I was actually watching a stream. Shout out to Satachi. I was watching this while you were doing your stream. You'll see why I didn't take a lot of pictures besides watching a stream. I started with her body because that makes the most sense, right? I kind of need to figure out what size of the body I'm going to do so I can scale the rest of it to the body. It was a little bean shape. Came out to be a pretty cute shape. Unfortunately, I did not take a picture of it, but the bean was a perfect start. Then we move on to the head. The head is one of the reasons why I did not take a lot of pictures. It was so infuriating to get this head to be a shape that I wanted. I could not, for the life of me, get it right. And I've drawn chibi faces before. Like, I can conceptualize how the side profile of me, like, I can conceptualize how that works. And on top of that, it started getting sticky, which confused me. I did not drop this piece of clay on the ground at all once, but it got sticky. Finally, I got it to a shape that I could live with. I wasn't happy with it. I wasn't angry at it. It just was a shape. I was done with it. I needed to move on or I was going to throw the clay on the ground myself this time. Once I got the head all together, I made probably the biggest mistake that I could have made. I put the head on top of the body. You don't know polymer clay. Polymer clay is not really lightweight. So I put this ginormous head on that little bean body. The head began to squish the body and deform it. This was the beginning of the end for this figure. I thought the head was the beginning of the end, but no, this was the beginning of the end. It could not balance, obviously, because it was top heavy. So I kind of panicked. I was like, what do I do to make it not fall over? I needed to stay up. I needed to not move and fall over, because if it falls over, both the body and head get deformed. I decided to do the arms. Maybe I could make the arms enough of a stabilization point for the body so that it would stop falling over. I did widow wheel arms, and did it work? No, because they were little arms. Silly me thinking a silly thought that it could stabilize with little arms when the head was so ginormous and heavy. So I was like, okay, what's another thing that I could do to make it stabilized? I could do the hair. I have metal pieces. I could use them as support for the head. And that's what I chose to do. I took the metal that I used as my previous guide and used it as the base for the hair. I built up the hair a little bit and then eventually bending it to get tied to the base of the head for support. I was hopeful maybe this would make it stop falling over and then I could start trying to fix things. And thankfully it did. It helped things not fall over every 5 seconds. I was pretty happy with how it looked. Then I decided to continue forth with the hair. Obviously there's more parts to her hair than just the pigtails. There's the buns, which came along at the same time roughly, and her bangs. I did the bangs and something snapped in me. How do people who make these beautiful clay anime figurines get the hair to stay? How do they get it to stay in one place and not move? Because every time that I put some hair on these bangs, they would just fall. I would make a nice little pretty arch like her hair, and then it would fall onto itself and get stuck onto the face. I could not figure out why. And if you're intelligent, you probably already figured out why. I mentioned it in the beginning. At this point, I decided, okay, Super Sailor Moon is out the door. Because if I did Super Sailor Moon, that would mean multiple more steps. That would mean taking care of her skirt, doing her legs, doing her boots, doing the bows, and I gave up on making this look like what I wanted. I decided, you know what, I just need to get this done. So I went with Princess Serenity because a dress sounded easier to mold. The white that I used was sticky before I even started putting it down. I don't understand. I wasn't even molding that part of the white that I was using. I don't understand. Maybe my hands were oily because I know hand oils are a thing, you know? Maybe I just needed to go wash my hands and dry them. Maybe. But just the white, I haven't even touched it. I barely even grabbed it and I could feel the stickiness. So what I did was I laid all of this down. I just started building it up. So I laid her legs out, or her dress out, and then I grabbed the tools that came with the clay kit and used them to mold the dress into a shape. It kept peeling up the clay. It wasn't making a nice smooth point, and I was done with this figure. I had constant problems, and I was just so frustrated and so emotionally overwhelmed that I was done. Once I got the dress to a point that reasonably it looks like a dress, I plopped it in the oven, baked it. Baking it was a process. It's still kind of squishy now. It's solid, it's baked, but it's still a little squishy. And then during the baking process, one of the hair buns slid down a little bit, revealing some of the metal that was in the hair, and I didn't even know how to fix it. I just cut the metal off and I just left it. Now I have this figure without a face, without details, and I was like, okay, maybe drawing a face might work. No, the face didn't work. I know that people who do clay stuff either use acrylic paint or like watercolor pencils for doing the face. I do have acrylic, but I didn't want to get all that stuff out. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to use Sharpie just to give it something so that it doesn't look like a creepy doll face with no human to it. Yeah, this figure now sits in my closet, never to see the light of day outside of this video. And at this point, after I made this figure, I just wanted to give up. I had tried, I had failed, and when that happens, my ADHD kind of just gives up. It's like, yep, I scratched that itch is done, goodbye. Having the idea for this video, having that kind of in my back pocket while I was making this, helped me not give up. It helped me be like, this would be a shit end to a video, huh? I made 2 clay figures. One of them came out to be a complete piece of shit in my mind. And is this how I wanted to end the video, celebrating the act of doing things? No, that's not how I wanted this video to end. That would be horrible. So the thought of the video helped inspire me to try again and rein in my greed. Let's go back to something a little bit smaller for my next project, something a little more simple. After that disaster, I took a couple of days break. I also wanted to think about some of the problems I was having. I didn't have the problem of dropping things anymore, good, but I still had the problem of the stickiness. The stickiness really made it hard to get the clay, the right shapes that I want. I tried making sure my hands were dry. I freshly washed them so all of the oils came off. I tried making sure the clay got breaks in between. Maybe it just needed to rest. Maybe it needed rest time. With these things in my mind, I began looking to figure out what I was going to do as my next project. I decided to do this adorable watermelon kitty. Wow. By Milk Bread Studios. Go follow them on Instagram, by the way. Their art is so cute. It was mostly simple shapes. It wasn't multi-complex 3D shape. It was, just a watermelon and a cat. So I had a visual reference. I decided that I was going to make this a cute little pin because it seemed like a natural kind of look for a pin. I took that as I'm going to make it a little more flat. It's still going to have dimension to it, but it's not going to be a 3D full shape. It was just going to be on a pin. I started making the colors for the watermelon. I, of course, mixed colors because none of the colors were the colors that I wanted. Came out pretty nice for colors. Then shaping began. When I first started shaping, I was kind of freehanding it, looking off the reference image that I had. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I just try drawing a shape on a piece of paper and then molding it inside of that? And hey, that worked. It worked to have like a visual reference that I used as a guide. Obviously, it wasn't going to be one-to-one because I didn't want to make it one-to-one. I wanted to make it me, just inspired by this adorable watermelon cat. I did very thin layers to kind of just make sure as I built up the bulb that I was doing it in the correct shape. Once I got to the top layer was just all of the little details. I didn't need to make all of the details go through the entire thing. But doing this made it have such an uneven texture. For the final layer, I stopped using my fingers and I exclusively used the tools that I had. The tools might make it a little bit more smooth. It was still really lumpy despite trying my best with these tools. I couldn't figure out how to make it nice and smooth. So So what I ended up doing was very lightly, I would press on with my thumb to make it smoother. So once I got the shape of the watermelon part done, I decided to do the rind and the bite. The bite was really easy to do because all I had to do was take that tool and just go smush and pull apart the clay, and then eventually mold the clay a little bit back into looking like a bite mark. The bite came out pretty cute, honestly, I think. And the rind was easier to do than the watermelon part because it was, again, smaller and less like finagling that I needed to do with the clay. And putting it all together, it looked pretty nice, actually. I was pretty proud of it. And then came time to do the face. I didn't want to copy the face one for Milk Bread Studios art because, one, although it was very cute, I did not want to try to figure out how I wanted to do an open mouth with a tooth, and I was just, I'm gonna keep it simple, and I decided to do more of my little face style, you know? And then the watermelon seeds. The seeds were probably, honestly, the most challenging part about this, and not even challenging in meaning of like making, more of in challenging of getting them to stick because they were so tiny that every time I touched it with my finger, it would just disintegrate. So I had to like touch it with the tool and then like slowly hover it over and then touch it onto the thing and pray that it stays. And then obviously baking it once it was all done, and overall I'm pretty happy with the result. It's not a one-to-one recreation of the original art, but having a reference made doing the craft so much easier. It made it so much easier to kind of conceptualize where I was going and what I needed to do. After making this cat, I felt a lot better about my experience. I definitely had thoughts and opinions forming about the entire process, but I decided to do one final project to kind of solidify all of my thoughts and give it one more good go. What I decided to do was a crystal fly from Genshin Impact. It took all of the experience of the watermelon cat and really kind of took it to another level. What I did first was kind of using the metal to get rough sizes for the crystal fly, basing off of a reference that I had on my computer. I wanted to kind of just get the general shapes things. Where I decided to start first was the core of the crystal fly, and oh boy, that was a challenge. I kept getting the shape just right, and then for some reason it would get smushed. The way I was going about this was I was making two separate little pyramids about the same size, and then just lightly touching them together and then using a tool or my finger to kind of just smooth out connection point. It was frustrating. But finally, the shape was done. It wasn't smushed. I put it to the side. Next, what I did was the bottom wings, the smaller wings, because I wanted to get a feel for how big I wanted this to be before I did the big wings. Using kind of the reference of the metal pieces, I shaped out the wing. I didn't use the metal pieces inside of it. It was more of just a guide for how roughly big I wanted it. But like, I was pretty happy with it. It just looked right. I was able to get the wing shaped how I wanted it to be. I was finally learning how to use the tools more to my advantage and avoid the super sticky clay, because I was obviously keeping my hands oily free and like taking breaks. It was going good. The wing came out perfect. The other wing was a little bit more tricky. It was hard to match it, and my brain for some reason kept defaulting to making just a clone. My brain really just did not like trying to reflect that image. I eventually got it looking right. I mean, it's not a perfect match, but I got it looking mostly right. I took a picture of the little core of the crystal fly and the wings together, and hey, this is actually going pretty well. It's going a lot better than the watermelon cat, it's going better than the duck, and it's definitely going better than the anime figure. Before I did the big wings, I decided to kind of return back to more of the smaller pieces. The metal details around the core of the crystal fly, so the bottom metal and the top metal piece. I was really anxious while doing this because I wanted, one, to have the crystal fly core near me, like right next to the pieces that I was working on, so that I could make sure they're right shapes, not too big, not too small, just right. And I was paranoid that I was going to mess it up somehow. The bottom metal piece came out just pretty much perfectly. Like, it was exactly the shape that I wanted, and it honestly looked really good. Like, there was dimension to the metal. Like, it wasn't just a flat piece, it had oomph to the top piece. not so much. That was a little bit more of a struggle. I couldn't get it in that same like kind of oomph to it. So it was very flat. And I tried doing the indent that is on the reference. However, when like literally carving an indent into the clay, it doesn't really show all that well. So I needed to roll out a really thin strip of gray clay, and it just didn't really fit all that right together. I'm not striving for perfection. I'm striving for good enough. And I thought it was good enough, so I left it. I put all of those pieces aside and then worked on the big wings. One of them came out perfect-ish. I tried doing the gradient again, but with more blended, more smooth gradient, and it's not like horrible. And the shape, chef's kiss on the shape. The shape came out perfectly, exactly how I wanted to. Like, it looks so good. It looks just like a crystal fly wing. And then matching it. Matching it was so hard. I tried to do a gradient a different way for this wing because I thought, okay, I know how that gradient went when I did the other wing, and I didn't exactly love how it looked. Why not try doing a gradient in a different way and seeing how it works? Can you notice something? I'm doing it in the same exact shape. I'm not reflecting it. I'm not reflecting the wing. I'm literally building the wing in the same exact shape. I didn't realize my issue until very much later, so that'll come, you'll see that. The main body color of the wing is not matching. It's not matching. The work in progress is too dark, and I hated that. It made me so angry. It makes my model so angry that my model freezes. Model fixed. Now let's talk more about this wing. Once I got the wing roughly in the correct shape, I realized that I didn't reflect it. I didn't reflect the shape. I literally had a clone of the other wing. My big brain decided to place some foil on top and kind of flip it over and slowly peel the foil from the back, thus reflecting the shape. It worked, sorta, kind of, but the gradient was all fucked up. The gradient was just gone. Wings are correctly done. Not perfect, but they're done. The next step was doing the details, so obviously I took a little bit of a break. Clay was rolled out so thin that if I touched it with my fingers, just like the watermelon seeds, it would go away. It would just vanish into the ether. I had to use the tools, and the tools, I'm still I'm getting better with them, but nowhere near as good. But hey, the details are on. One wing is definitely better than the other. I think you guys can pick out which wing is better than the other, but they're done. And I baked all of the pieces separately so that I could assemble it instead of trying to put it all together and bake it all as one piece. And I just couldn't figure out how to, assemble it. I could one way make it more separate, like an actual crystal fly, or I could have them more up close. I did up close because one, I asked my friends and my friends were like, up close looks better. And also it seemed easier to kind of manage. I almost cried while assembling this. I'm not joking. I almost cried. One thing I absolutely hate is the feeling of dried super glue on my fingers. I hate that. I hate the feeling. I hate trying to clean it off. It's all just, I hate it. But I wanted to use super glue to assemble because I didn't want to try using more clay to kind of like bake it together as glue, I had super glue. Super glue works. Things were just not sticking. Took so much time to get them stuck, and I had so much super glue on my fingers. But it was done. It's finally glued together. It's all stuck together, but I have to be extremely fragile with it. Like, I have to hold it like I am cradling like something made out of glass. Because if I do one wrong move, it comes apart. My feelings on this one are like, I'm agitated that main colors of the wings still don't match. Like, it bothers me a lot. But I am proud of how this piece came out. I can look at it and say, yeah, I can be proud of this. Thus ends my final project of clay for this video. Let's move on to some final thoughts, shall we? With 4 projects under my belt, how do I feel about polymer clay? I want to kind of circle back though, before I give my final thoughts, about what the problem was with the clay, specifically comparing it to the clay figures. My clay was heavy. I couldn't get the shape to flow like the anime figures that I had. Do you want to know why? Clay artists that do anime figures like the ones I have use air dry clay instead of Polymer. Research the bane of my existence for this. Air dry clay is significantly lighter than Polymer clay. And well, duh, it dries in the air, meaning that it's easier to get those shapes to stay. I was never going to be able to make a clay figure like the ones I have out of Polymer clay. So that was a little bit of a ding on my intelligence. I made the incorrect choice in clay that I wanted to really do. But I still had this experience of Polymer clay that I really wanted to talk about. How do I feel about Polymer clay specifically? Not to try to achieve the goal of a clay figure. I don't think Polymer clay is really for me, honestly. My brain struggles to work in 3D shapes, especially with a physical medium. I have attempted in the past to do 3D modeling, and that's a lot more easier for me to grasp compared to a physical medium. It was extremely frustrating for me to get the correct shapes that I had in my mind to manifest in front of me. I assume, though, this was mainly because, I'm not experienced. I'm sure experienced clay makers, can get shapes roughly to the point with some frustration, maybe, but, not as much frustration as I had. And the satisfaction that I got when I finally got those shapes correct was not large enough to overcome the frustration that I had while doing that. But doing this gave me a lot more respect for clay artists. Obviously, I have a huge buttload of respect for all kinds of artists. Except AI artists, you aren't fucking making art. You are throwing words at a robot who learned off of stealing art that they didn't get permission to use to get something soulless and only outcome focused. You are not focused on actually creating a piece of artwork. You are focused on the outcome of the artwork. You'll actually have more fun learning and doing rather than throwing words at a screen. Anyways, molding clay and using it with my hands really gives me a new perspective on how much dexterity is needed on top of obviously creative mindsets or planning, a whole new world of understanding for me. And it honestly makes me cherish the clay figures that I have from actual clay, the people that do it. It makes me cherish them a whole lot more and smile when I look at them and be like, man, they did such good work. I'm amazed. Despite me not thinking Polymer clay is my thing, I still really enjoyed doing the clay work. I don't regret doing this. I do regret, though, not researching what actual clay I needed for my desired outcomes, but I do enjoy that I did this and that I stayed committed to doing this and committing to make 4 projects and making this video to show my experience of just exploring and discovering new artworks. Yeah, I'm just really happy that I did this. I got to scratch that itch that I had in my brain for trying to make myself a figure, even though it didn't go well. But I got to explore a new medium of art that I wasn't really familiar with, and I made some decently cute things, except for one. As I said earlier in this video, find something that you want to learn and just do it. Enjoy the art of doing. Don't care about the outcome, just do it. That is my experience with Polymer clay. I will probably do more episodes about this because I have one planned, and the next one is impasto paint. Honestly, if you ever want to know what my obsession is, that my ADHD brain is I must do, just check my Throne account. You'll see me putting things I want this art craft, please. Because it's the honest truth. And let me know if you do take up my challenge of trying something and just doing. Thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing. Keep fighting your battles, and I will see you guys next time. Toodaloo!